Call to order the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, December 16th, 2015. Record should show that we have 5 commissioners present. We should take a look at minutes, and anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes that we have in front of us for the last meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion on the minutes? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. That motion carries. We have one agenda item today, which is a special use permit for a primary educational facility, and we're going to ask staff to present that first, or okay, applicant. Anybody have anything to say about the application? It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Andrew Schrank with Highlands Engineering and Surveying. We've been representing the applicant on this application. We're just here to address any questions you may have. The pastor of the church, Donovan Cack, is here, as well as another representative from the church. So if you have any questions of us, we'd be happy to address those.
Any questions for Mr. Schrank or anybody else from the applicant? Is this a...
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just on the proposed plat, I think I remember seeing that there's a utility easement around nearly the entire perimeter, except I think the western portion, which there was a southwest water. I don't know if there's a way to put that around also the west side, but kind of the way that the site layout is, it may not need it depending on where you're going to take electric service. And that's actually Rough Rider territory there too, so
Sure.
I'm not sure if they had desired that or not.
I believe there was also a continuation of that easement through Filkowski's subdivision to the west, so there would be access on the west side of that property line.
Okay.
Like you say, we avoided that portion because of an existing water main in that area that we didn't want to have utilities over top of.
Okay.
But I think there was a continuation through
Okay.
Filkowski's.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else for Mr. Schrank?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I do have one item. We did visit on the site plan. There was a revised site plan in your file. The pastor came in yesterday, and we visited on that. There's going to be some slight modifications that he's going to propose to work with staff on the landscaping placement in the front of the site, because they didn't place a sign on the site plan. Obviously, they want to have a sign there, so I ensured him that we would work on that site plan together and alter it so he could have a sign there.
Okay. Anything else? Can somebody help me? Is this a public hearing? Okay. Then we'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak concerning this application for a special use permit. Anybody from the public? Seeing no comments from the public, we'll close the public hearing, and I assume we have a staff report.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioner. Steve Josephson, City County Planner. And this is a request for a primary educational facility. This is zoned agricultural, and this is one of the few zoning districts where a special use permit is needed in order to, to operate a primary educational facility. Commissioners, you may remember about a year ago or so, the Adventist Church came before you for a plat to build, to build a church, and it was approved. What happened with this was the applicants had come in and they wanted to get a building permit. This is in the extraterritorial zone. They wanted to get a building permit. The permit was for a school, and at that point, looking at the city's code, they needed to get the special use permit in order to go forward. The conditions that you have in front of you are ones that they're reflected in the information given to us by the applicant and the discussions that we've had with them. In terms of the site plan, we're reviewing the site plan because this is in the ETZ. This is the county's building permit process. We're reviewing the site plan portion of it. The one thing I wanted to state on here is I think they did a good job of moving the school to the northeast corner so that it's away from the industrial development on the west side. Staff recommends approval subject to the conditions in front of you, and we recognize there will be modifications to the site plan. For example, there's no trash enclosures on there, and that's something we'll need to work with them on, along with the landscaping and location of the sign. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman, if I might. Steve, why do we have as a condition the maximum number of staff members shall be 9?
That's what they stated in their application. And not only that,
So
just
we're
to
going to limit
account.
them to 9?
Pardon?
We're going to limit them to 9?
They have 5 right now. What they've indicated is ultimately they're going to have 9. And the impact that has, that could have potential impacts on the parking in that area. Knowing that they're going to be sharing some parking with the church, but mostly that's a design-oriented. It's a design-oriented. It's there for design purposes. But it was in their application where they said they plan to hire a maximum of 9 staff people.
Who's going to enforce that? What, if they have 10, we're going to shut them down? I mean,
Well, we'll let the applicant address that.
some of these conditions.
Well, no, I'm just thinking that this is a condition. I don't know where it really has any bearing on the project at all. So what, they have a maximum of 80 parking spots or whatever it is, but say that school grew.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have an issue with. I think we wanted to. We had talked about the parking and them having 5 and so on, and ultimately giving them 9. But from my perspective, I don't know that it necessarily needs. I don't know that one necessarily needs to be in there. We just base it on their narrative and what they've planned and showed us for the site.
I think, if I may, special use permits or conditional use permits are typically very specific in nature. When you apply for an approval for a certain level, so let's use the number of students. So if they say they're going to have 80 students there, then the whole site is designed for, and the building's designed for 80 students. That's why you would have a number there, because if they wanted to expand, and we hope they do well, and they have 120 students, they would come back in and amend this to make sure that their site would work. So, I think that's where that condition stems from, is their ultimate number of employees was 9. They're going to hire 5 now, I believe. At 9, they would be at capacity, I'm assuming, for the structure that they're building out there, along with the 80 students, which would push them over the edge, and they would need to come in and amend this special use permit. So it's typically your site plan and your numbers of intensity of uses on a site is what directs your approval, or what you guys are giving approval for. So that's why you do have to put some sort of a constraint on it as far as numbers and sizes.
I guess the condition that caught my eye more than that one were the time restrictions. I didn't understand that.
Again,
So if they want to have a summer class for keyboarding or whatever, it looks like they can't do it.
well, and again, we go with what the applicants tell us in terms of their operations. What they tell us is going to happen, what they tell us is going to happen on the site. But we also recognize too that, quite honestly, Commissioner Jackson, there's going to be a church on the site too, and they are going to also use this building as a church until they build their church. So, there's going to be activity taking place. There's going to be activity taking place on that, on that site. Part of the reason for the time restriction is then you don't get the conflict between the church activities and the school activities, especially when it comes to traffic and parking.
And you guys are okay with the time restrictions?
Mr. Chairman, we were just discussing that, I guess, and obviously the church would prefer to have as few restrictions on this permit as possible. We don't want to have to come back and 5, 10 years and renew this permit for small things like this. Some of these things were included in the applications as requirements. It wasn't something we wanted to restrict ourselves to, but it was required by city to know what our operations were typically going to consist of. You know, we were planning to have 9 staff. There could be a chance in the future that gets exceeded, but that is our future plan. With hours of operation, you know, we're planning on a typical school operation, but there would be events outside of that you know, may exceed those hours of operation as well. So we would prefer not to have to revise this permit for special circumstances, and we'd like to have as few restrictions as possible. It was discussed a little bit on parking too with staff. If we exceed, we currently have plans, like he said, for parking for 5 staff members, and I think we have 84 parking spaces on this site that would accommodate both the church and the school. There is no other place to park, so if they exceed the parking there, they're going to have to expand their parking lot. There is, you know, no on-street parking like that on this site, so if they are restricted by parking, they would have to expand their parking lot, and I guess I don't see the need for the restriction on staff or the hours as well, but we're open to discussion on that as well. So.
My question, so are we restricting them to 89 people in this building by the special use permit or by like fire code, or, I mean, who is gonna go out there? What if they have 81 students and they don't tell us? I mean, I'm not sure I understand this.
You have to, you have to have a parameter, and
Did we restrict Trinity High School? Is it by how many parking spots, their occupancy of the building, or is it by this?
well, with their expansion to the building, then they have to have the same number of parking stalls. Prior to that, they were exempt, if you will, or grandfathered in because they were there prior to the standards that we have in place now. So depends when things come in.
You know, in the case of someone like Trinity High School, I believe that's a permitted, you know, permitted use over there. So that would have been based on the, you know, that would have been based on the, you know, on the actual size of the school itself. I think in a case like this, the reason why this is a special use permit in agriculture is because you have other activities there. You know, agriculture is primarily agricultural activities. So the question is, are there going to be certain uses out there that are going to have an impact on those activities by, by being there? And certainly a primary school is going to be a much more intensive use than what you're normally going to find in agriculture. And I believe that's probably the reason in our code why this is a, you know, this is a special use. So the question is, what kind of conditions do you need to mitigate the impact of that area, knowing that the adjacent property on our long-range plan is shown as residential. It's agriculturally zoned, but you know, it's going to be residential in the long run. So we're just thinking of the impacts that this is going to have on those properties that are located to the east and to the south of it. And I guess that's the judgment there is what kind of conditions do we need based upon what future development is, what these surrounding properties are like.
I have a question, Steve. How did we determine 89 parking stalls?
That's based upon the, we actually have a code.
Well, I was looking, I know that they
It's in our code.
Students, kindergarten through 8th, and I don't.
Well, you know what, the 80 parking one, it comes from this, it's a combination of two things. The 80 comes from the church, and there's a number of seats. There's a number of parking spaces based upon that. The 9 came from them projecting that they were going to have 9 employees, and that showed up on the site plan that came in with the building permit. So that's what they put forward to us in accordance with the parking standards in our zoning ordinance.
The church is actually shown on the site plan too, so we have to acknowledge.
They'll both be there.
Those at the same time.
Yeah, they're both going to be there, and they know that that's going to happen. So rather than just build the parking for the school itself, they're going to take care of the parking all at once. So 80 will serve the church. You know, per our code, 9 would serve the school based on the maximum number of employees that they anticipate having.
And if you look at condition number 4 on the hours of operation and the uses, It is pretty open from the standpoint, yes, it designates 7 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, but special events associated with the school, which pretty much could be all of their events, obviously, or anything associated with that outside those hours and on weekends are allowed. So I think what that condition is doing is specifying that it is a school/church site, and anything that's affiliated with those uses would be allowed on that site. There again, you know, I think what we're struggling with is the conditional use permit or special use permit process is a use with conditions. That's really what it is. It's a use with conditions that we've condoned in that zone. And so you do need to come up with mitigating conditions that are appropriate for this particular site and this particular use. So that's why we have these lists of.
You know, Walt, we're probably belaboring something we don't need to here, but I agree with you. There is a lot of flexibility in items 4 and 5 both. But it does say months of instruction shall be August through May, and I just don't know why we would say that. Yes, the next sentence does give flexibility, but it just seems like an unnecessary condition. I understand we need conditions, that's what it's all about. But it just seems unnecessary to me to...
Mr. Chairman, you can surely strike that from the, that part of the condition.
Let's see here. Your report is finished, Steve?
It's finished, yes.
Okay.
It's finished, and certain, you know,
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Otherwise, we look for a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Seventh-day Adventist special use permit petition, subject to the conditions listed as meeting the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Now we will vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Are we finished?
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a few things. Stephen's going to go over a few amendments that you folks discussed about a year ago. You have a handout in front of you that outlines one of them, and then some other items that you discussed for consideration that you actually approved a year ago have not gone to the City Commission for approval. And so Stephen's going to outline those because he's much more familiar with them because he was in the middle of it. And we're hoping to take those to City Commission here soon, and then he'll give you a brief on the handout you have.
Yes, thank you very much. Commissioners, about a year ago when Ed Corton was here, he had brought forward a number of changes to the zoning ordinance. Key of them where there was some cleaning up of some conditions. There were some explanations, some cleaning up in the tables in terms of how large, what lot sizes were needed for anything that was multifamily. It reflected some zoning interpretations that had been done. There were some obsolete things in the code that were also changed. And at the time, the Planning and Zoning Commission had given approval to go forward with those changes. With the direction, there was a discussion about the issue of duplexes and splitting lots for duplexes. And the Planning and Zoning Commission had given direction at the time, for staff, staff and, to try and craft something that would go forward to the, to City Commission along with the rest of those changes. Things that happened that delayed this. We had two different attorney reviews and a new planning director review, and finally got to the point where we're ready to go forward to City Commission. The one thing we wanted to bring forward, we had Mr. Hadley and I had a discussion about how to handle the issue of duplexes, the clarification of that, and then also the split. What's been happening now is that people have been building duplexes and then splitting the lots, into sizes that are often below the minimum lot size of that zoning district. And the proposal that we had was to add a note in there that said that the minimum lot size for a duplex is 10,000 square feet. That's across every zoning district. A lot developed with a duplex cannot be split unless the minimum area of each new lot resulting from the split is that of the respective zoning district. So for example, you would need if you were in R2 and R3 zoning, if you wanted to split a lot that a duplex was on, you'd have to end up with 2 lots that had a minimum of 7,000 square feet. And that lot splits would be performed in accordance with the procedures found in Chapter 34 of the Municipal Code. I don't know, Walter, do you have anything more that you wish to add to that at this time?
Well, and I think I do, thank you, Stephen. One of the reasons this is a little more pertinent right now is we've had a number of splits that have happened and have been recorded and they weren't approved by the city. And unfortunately, they went through appraisals, lending institutions, and now people own property that basically are non-conforming sites. So this is an effort also to help clarify and clear that up. If someone's going to build a duplex on a duplex lot, that's great, but we want to make it clear that it's going to be one single building and ownership indefinitely when they come in for that duplex on a duplex-sized lot. And that, there's been some confusion, and there's been a number of lots that have been split and created, there will be some heartaches down the road. The second time it's sold, or someone will find that out, and then it'll wind up affecting some of those current owners now, unfortunately. We have a case where the assessor actually has a duplex that was split, and the 2 partner owners, one gentleman owns 8 feet of the other guy's interior wall because of how it was lined out and set up. That obviously doesn't create a good situation. So, you know, we have some of those scenarios, and we're trying to clean those up and make it much more clear. If the intent is to build a duplex, then that's great. We're all for it. But if the intent is to build 2 attached single units and divide those, then we need to have the parameters so they can actually do that.
I don't know about the rest of you, but when I read this, help me understand, it says minimum size of the lot is 10,000 square feet. And then we say a split of a duplex lot shall result in 2 lots with a minimum of 7,000 square feet. What am I missing? We say it's 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but then if you want to actually, the intent of a duplex is to have a rental unit. For the most part, the duplex is a rental unit. So, you know, we have allowed a larger lot size to have a duplex there as a rental unit where people are renting both sides of it. But if the intent of building the duplex is to ultimately split it for attached
That would be a
housing.
situation where you're condoing out the duplex or something, I suppose?
Yeah, well,
Well,
I
but-
mean, if you're going to split it down where each person owns their land, but there's a shared common wall, then it'd have to be a 14,000 square foot lot.
But
I can tell you, I'm not in favor of this. I build a lot of twin homes. And there's a lot of issues with, you run into lots that have been developed, and we're going to run into a lot of them, because me and Ed have gone round and round on this when he was here, that are 11,000, 12,000, even 14,000 square feet, but they have an easement on one side, 10 foot. So you have to shove that duplex over and then split it. Well, one lot ends up being 6,000 square feet, one's 7,500 square feet. It's got to, I'm not a fan. I mean, the duplex lots that we've approved in the past in plats, half of these are going to be non-conforming now, unless they keep them all one unit. Well, nobody wants to do that either. Then you have to have a condo association and somebody to keep this condo association and be a part of it, because then the land doesn't transfer. So I'm not a fan. As a builder, I've built 50 duplexes in this town probably. This restriction is gonna, you can take Fisher's East Side, there's 4 or 5 lots sitting there right now that will not comply. You will not be able to split them just because of easements.
Okay. Okay, I'm still not sure I understand
So,
what this would say.
minimum lot
is
would
that we
be-
need 14,000.
Well, the minimum lot could be 10,000 if you're not gonna split it.
Right. I understand.
But it has to be 14 if you're gonna split
Okay.
it. But if you have an easement on one side and you have to slide the building over,
You can't make it.
you can't make it. I mean, it's, me, I'm not a fan of that wording, the way it is. Like I said, we're gonna have lots non-conforming that this commission has approved all over town, and nobody, duplexes, I mean, there's very few people that do condo associations anymore. I mean, unless they're a high-rise, you know, where they get stacked on top or something.
The lots that are already created and split, this wouldn't affect.
I know, but there's lots that are sitting there that aren't split yet. I mean, I know, like I said, I know 3 or 4 right off the top of my head that people own, that we've built all the way up the street. And that's not me, it's a different builder, and we've split them all. And now we're gonna have 3 left that we're gonna tell this guy, well, no, you can't do what he did, we're changing it. It's gotta be a case-by-case basis. I mean, there's gotta be some, maybe going forward, we'd say the minimum lot size is 14,000, starting January 1st, but I mean, these existing lots, I mean, we gotta work with these people, so
You're suggesting on new plats, you're saying.
that would be my suggestion. If you're gonna do an R2 lot, it's gotta be 14,000 if you plan, or it can be 10,000, but if you plan to split it, it's gotta, I mean, all these, I mean, we've approved 9,000, 10,000 square foot duplex lots in this town.
What is
I guess, how do we address, you know, I mean, the case by case, and Jen, please jump in, on the case by case method, I don't know that there's really a way to deal with that from our standpoint, from the existing lots that haven't been split. The intent of this is any new lots that are created would follow this process. So realize that yes, applies to a new subdivision that comes in to our desk next month that we might review. Yes, then this would apply to it, you know, if this was adopted. It also would apply to existing lots because this would be the standards at hand. So I don't know that we can have the standard for new things, new subdivisions, and not apply it to replats of existing subdivisions. So I don't know that there's, I guess my answer is, to resolve the problem, I don't know that there's ever going to be a politically correct, great time to do it. The best time to do it is when we're not real busy building duplexes, in my opinion. And if you have another option, Commissioner, we'd love to hear it, you know, as far as what might work. We want to resolve this too, because honestly, we do have a number of homeowners, number of people that have purchased those that are now in a bad situation.
Well, part of that, I mean, part of that bad situation is they weren't split correctly. I mean, they weren't surveyed and weren't split correctly. They were just basically, the east half of lot 12 is now in the 10 feet. I mean, yeah, if they were split correctly, this would be a non-issue with those people. I have a hard time with the 7,000. I'd rather see 5,000.
Well, that's why we have it. I mean, that's why we have it in front of you again, because this is the one item from the group of items that you sent forward last year for amendments, and we're going to move forward with those because you actually approved those. This is the one item that was not a consensus, and there was some discussion, and we've kind of reached out to Jason because he was kind of, I think, designated at that time as the contact person to discuss it.
I mean, me and Ed worked on this because it happened last year and it happened the year before. I mean, there was a case-by-case basis. It came in, one lot was 6,500 and one lot was 7,800 because there was an easement running down one side. We approved them, as long as they were split correctly.
And that doesn't you know, and I don't think, at least I can't appreciate the issue as well as you guys probably can, but that doesn't seem unreasonable to me.
I don't think it's unreasonable either. I mean, if we put a hard and fast rule in, going and grandfather everybody back, I mean, retroactive, there's going to be a lot of non-conforming lots that are just going to sit there because nobody wants to do condo associations, just like homeowners associations. We know how those have went over around here. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants to be part of them. Nobody wants to have meetings. Nobody wants to enforce them.
You know, perhaps one option might be is, you know, the 7,000 square feet that we have, tend to use for like a standalone detached home. I guess the question is, do you then create a different lot size, a smaller lot size, as a minimum size for an attached, as an attached home? You know, do you then create something, something different, which essentially means that we are creating a smaller lot size for, you know, a single family home than what you have one which is a larger lot size for a detached home, but then the city is saying, well, we're going to go from 7,000 down to what, 5,000 or 6,000 if you have an attached. If you have an attached home, which is that's a major change in policy in terms of our code. Yeah, I'm just throwing that out there, you know, and I can't say that I've not looked at any other cities to see how they handle if they have different lot sizes for attached homes. You know, I'm just throwing that out there as, that's what I'm starting to hear is, you know, do we want to have a smaller lot size in the case of attached homes instead of creating non-conforming lots? That's just something I'm throwing out there. I'm not advocating one way or the other. We would probably need to do some research to see if number one, if that's something that's customary elsewhere, and number two, if that's going to be an acceptable standard in the city.
Commissioners, if I could, just one item from the engineering side of things. I think as long as we would be at, you know, there's probably no magic number, but say 10,000 square feet per lot and it's split, I think we would be fine with that from engineering because we're looking at runoff and drainage, and I think if we get to that, you know, if it was 7,000 before, and you put a really nice size, maybe a single level duplex that's 2,200 square feet, you start creeping up on the amount of impervious area that we're putting on those lots. I think at 10,000, you're probably fine. A lot of these duplexes, I imagine, don't have big garden sheds in the back and other impervious areas. So from a drainage standpoint, I would say 10,000 is probably a good practical minimum for runoff. And then from a planning perspective, I guess, well, what's your goal? Is it affordable housing? And we want, you know, I would say then, you know, you could go with the wider or the larger lots and just say, yeah, this looks better, has a more R1 feel to it. Or is your goal density? You know, at times we've talked a lot about density when we've talked the R2 and R3 things. Well, if density is our goal, then let's make these lots allow as small a possible lot. But that's your decision, I guess, just my thoughts. So, but I think anything over roughly 10,000 would be just fine from a runoff standpoint.
These ones at Fisher East Side, I mean, some of those lots are 100 by 150. So they're 15,000 square feet. And then you take a 10-foot easement out of one side. The duplexes that the Brews are building over there, they sell them for $230,000 each side. Those would not conform. The one side would be too small.
Yeah, and like I say, that seems like a reasonable exception for a situation like that.
And that's almost a 15,000 square foot lot.
Yeah. And I don't know how we could write that into this note. There's probably a way. But I think Craig makes a good point too, you know, even questioning,
You know, Commissioner.
what's the basis for the 14,000?
You know, commissioners, we can come back and at least look at some other cities and see how they handle the, you know, the attached homes, because if you look at this in terms of an absolute, which is the minimum lot size for a single-family home in R2 is 7,000 square feet. You know, you build a duplex, you split it on a 10,000 square foot lot, you split it in half, you've created 2 single-family homes on 5,000 square foot lots. So is the question, do we look at saying, yeah, we're fine with 7,000 square feet for a detached single-family home, and then say, but it can be lesser because of, you know, because of those considerations? Could it be lesser where we have attached homes? You know, at least there's something in the code that's a guide, you know, that, so there's something so that there's something consistent. You know, otherwise we're creating lot splits that really are not, they don't conform with what's in it currently in our code.
Well, it's the 3,500 that's struck out. Is that what it was before? Minimum lot size?
Where's that?
Right on.
No, you know what that was? What that was in the past was you took the minimum lot size of 7,000 and then you added 3,500 onto it, and that was the minimum. That was the minimum lot size that you needed for a duplex. That was the confusion in the code. Was you started out with a single-family home of 7,000 square feet, and then if you wanted to do a duplex, it was add 3,500 onto it, and you know the minimum lot size for a duplex was 10,500 square feet. That's what that was.
Want to take another run at this?
It's your wish. You know, we'd like to get a little direction on, because I think that it's been on the table for a year. You know, I think we need to get a little direction and then just pick a direction and find some information. We can do some comparisons to other places in our region here of what they do, but you know, really your feelings as far as what you want for the community. The R2, realize, you know, as Craig said, and I agree with what he said, I don't feel that our R2 district is a high density. We're not trying to get a high density use out of the R2. It's kind of a transition, and if you look in town, most of our R2 is directly adjacent to R1, and it's kind of a transition amongst R1. So I don't know that we really want to make those so small that they do stick out, because right now, I think, Jason, I mean, you and whoever has been building those have done a good job as far as that transition. You go over by the rec center, I'll use that as an example. There's a number of those homes over there, and they fit in. They really do. But I think if you start making those lots this big, they are not going to fit in, because I think we have some common wall townhomes that are directly adjacent to some apartments over there that you probably wouldn't want to start creeping into getting into that small a space and have it next door to your single-family, your regular traditional single-family home. So I see it as a transition zone, really, in the residential districts here in Dickinson. I would say that, you know, we need to pick a number that works, not only for the builders, you know, as far as building these products. On the easements, Jason, I just have one question on that. When you say they have an easement, what is that easement?
Utility.
So, like, their buildings, I'm not 100% sure, but they're...
But that would still be considered part of the lot.
I think they're 80 feet wide, their buildings. I'm not totally sure on the math, but, okay, so you have a corner lot on the one they're building right now. You have a 15-foot setback on one side, you got a 10-foot setback on the other. Well, they have an 80-foot building and the lot's 100. If you split it equally, the building wouldn't fit because of the corner setback.
Gotcha.
And the easement on
If we left room for exceptions for setbacks and easements, would that take care of most of the issues?
I think so, but I mean, you're gonna have to have some parameters. Like I said, I'm not a fan of 7,000 square feet minimum for each split. I'm more a fan. I mean, to me, a duplex should be it's people that want a smaller house, a smaller lot. I mean, I think 5,000, 5,500 maybe even. But I mean, 7,000, that's a single family lot, I mean, basically.
But if they're being split anyway, then it's not really a duplex, they're two attached homes.
Mhm.
That's essentially what it turns out to be. Traditionally, a duplex has been a rental unit, but this is a case of, we're building this like a duplex, but we're gonna sell each unit off and the land that goes along with it. So essentially, that it is essentially, it's attached, they are attached single-family homes. That's what you're creating. So the question is, what's the appropriate lot size that would fit that? Because right now, our code would tell us
Most people who
7,000, could
people
it
who
be
move
something
into a
else?
duplex, I think, don't expect as much of a yard
No.
or as much of a, now, I don't know what happens when you start talking about garages and all that. I suppose there's designs that,
Yeah, I mean, and I always say the ones that I build, I mean, you can't build them on even a 14,000 square foot. I mean, you need more. I mean, they're bigger. I mean, they're 120 feet wide. So you got to have a pretty good sized lot to fit them on because they have triple garages and stuff. But I just look at the affordable housing ones. I just think we're going to run into a lot of issues with lots we've approved at smaller sizes, and all of a sudden you tell them you can't split them. They got to keep them as, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I think it needs to be on a, if it makes sense, basis. But how do you write that into a code?
Yeah, you know what, they were talking about 5,000 square foot lots, and they just gave up on it. They just gave up on the idea, and they came in with standard zoning.
but that was for R1.
Yeah, that was for R1 and for that was for R1. They were gonna have an area in there for duplexes, but again, they just went with standard zoning. So they did go with standard zoning, so it's gonna be whatever, whatever the code is.
I think it's reasonable to look at maybe a little smaller lot size for those, because I think, Gene, I agree, the expectation is not necessarily that they're going to have a big sprawling yard and large expanses, but there again, the transition of where we're putting these, I think still needs to fit visually with the single-family homes that are either next to it or behind it. I think that's the thing that
I
really
think that's
we
a
need.
valid point. I agree with them.
And I agree with you too, Walter. The problem, like I said, is
Because it
not-
keeps the value for both.
The problem is the way this is written, these duplexes that we're building now wouldn't even fit on a 15,000 square foot lot. Because of easements and setbacks. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to build these small duplexes, which are 1,250 square feet each side. They wouldn't even fit
Well,
because of the lot split. So that's what I mean.
have you guys talked recently, in recent weeks?
Well, I've been
Well,
gone for a couple
yeah,
of
he's
weeks,
been gone, he's been out, we
Okay.
tried to get together, but yeah, we wanted
Can we
to
do
just
that?
bring it.
Can we do
Sure.
that?
Yep.
You guys get together and
I mean,
see what you can
yeah,
figure out?
that's my only hang up. If you can't even make it work on a 15,000 square foot lot, but I mean,
Okay.
then there's got to be some change. I mean,
I do think, my opinion, with these other items that we did reach consensus on, I think you shouldn't wait for this.
No, I'm kind of like, that's the reason we did this, because I told Stephen that I'd like to get it on the next city commission.
Bring it forward, and if we
January
do
and-
that 2, 3, 4 times a year,
Absolutely.
bringing ordinance changes on our zoning code,
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah, and we can talk about this one for however long we need to talk about it.
Well,
And-
let's try to get this done too.
But I don't want to tag the rest of that stuff that you guys actually did already approve.
Okay, what else do we have?
Oh, go ahead, Al.
Because I know sometimes I think we were asking for these, and they're kind of picking up a lot of the lot they want, almost thinking around the entire perimeter of every single lot, and especially coming from the very first developer who's,
when we ran into that with MU and West Point, they wanted 10-foot on each side and some property.
yeah, I don't mean just sitting here cutting my own throat either, but it's like sometimes I feel like we ask for a lot of that, and it's just like, I mean, we could have it on one side of it, and it's up to the big lot, and I'm not sure, how we're regulating, and you, we tend to think what we want, and back to the.
It seems like we've lost the practice of centering the easements on the lot lines in a lot of cases.
Well, a lot of times they're wanting to on the side.
And what happens, well, whenever somebody puts a fence in there, then there's like, right, you can't get it. So what we've been asking for is either 10 feet on this side or 10 feet on one side, then you can run the main line
Yeah,
along that
yeah.
side and let the southern one property. There might be something like that to figure out, because I know sometimes because we ask for a lot of that's on the electrical side, we have to put maybe a one on the side, but they don't want everybody on the north side with the gas.
I hate to do this to you, but I know I have a meeting at 8 o'clock. I can be a little bit late, but what else do we have?
Mr. Chairman, all I have is, a few months ago, I did ask the board if you would be interested in serving as the Urban Forestry Board. I think what the plan is right now is we're going to, I'm going to poll some of the existing urban forestry members and see if they're still interested, and I think the direction we're going is we probably would hold the meetings at the same time that we have our planning meetings. It'd be a time certain. If any of those people are interested, and Craig is one of them, and he is interested, so he would be part of it. They would show up for that meeting and just be an addition to your board, very similar, I think, what the county does with the fairgrounds and park board. I think that's the direction it's going. I just wanted to make sure, because I was visiting with Sean the other day, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys still have the concurrence. I don't think it's going to be a lot of extra work, but we need a regular board and regular members that attend to make it work, because we need to get a little more exposure to the whole program, and we're going to try to do some fun little design projects in town that we kind of need to run through a board. So if everybody's still okay with that, if everybody sort of nods their head yes to that would be great. And I'll carry that forward. We'll see where that goes. And all I have is Merry Christmas to you all.
Then the one other thing too, real quickly, is, and Walter has talked to you about this, we are starting the new application process.
Oh, yes.
Starting the beginning
started, yep.
of the year, where, you know, people try to work everything out before they put their applications in. Yeah, so,
Okay, thanks, you guys.
thank you.
Anything else? Not, motion to adjourn. And a second? We are adjourned. Merry Christmas.